Hey guys, my name is Kayla and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the Arrowverse. This isn't going to be too in-depth. I'm not going to go into every show and everything that happens and all the plot points. This isn't like an in-depth breakdown. We're just going to talk about how much I love it and the fact that I think the Arrowverse will always be better than any DCU movies, other shows that they can come up with. And we're going to talk about that. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, so naturally you guys are probably like, are you crazy? The Arrowverse better than any other DC project? What is wrong with you? And I get that, it has its problems. There are some lower budget, there are some cringy moments, but so are there in the films and stuff, so deal with that. But basically we're going to be talking about the Arrowverse as a whole. And if you're not familiar with what the Arrowverse is, basically CW made a DC universe called the Arrowverse, and it's called that because it started with the Arrow. And before watching the Arrow, I had never even heard of the character, to be honest with you. It's not one of those characters that I heard of from DC before, because naturally I'm not someone who reads the comics from DC or Marvel or any other comics. So the only characters I know are ones that are introduced through film, movies, stuff like that. So yeah, I never heard of Arrow before that. I might have seen him in Young Justice and stuff like that, but I never thought of him as a big character and stuff like that. So when the show came out, first of all, I didn't watch it when it came out. I watched it much later on Netflix. But when I first watched it, I was like, okay, Arrow, I don't know who he is, but I think I like this because I like superhero stuff. And from the get-go, I did not watch the Arrow first, I watched the Flash first. I did later do all of them chronologically, but I didn't know about the Arrowverse at first. So I watched I remember I watched Flash because I really liked the actor that plays the Flash, Grant Gustin. I remember seeing him in Glee and other stuff. So I was like, I'm gonna watch this. And then I watched Supergirl, and then I watched Arrow. So Arrow was actually the last one of the golden trio, as I would call it, even though that doesn't make sense, I guess, but that's the last one I watched from them. And then I spread out into the Legends of Tomorrow, and there are some shows I haven't seen. I have not seen Black Lightning, and I have not watched Superman and Lois. I know that is arguably, everyone says that is the best Arrowverse show, and it's got higher budget and it's so much better and all that, but I haven't seen it. And it's probably because I've always not been that interested in Superman, because he is this Boy Scout and stuff, and it does bore me. But I do want to watch that because from clips I've seen, it looks really interesting. And I think the actor, the parts of him I've seen as Superman in Supergirl and the other shows where they do crossovers, I really liked his performance, so I will watch it. But I have not, so I will tell you that so you can keep that in mind when I'm talking about the Arrowverse. So, but yeah, the Arrow, I think we can all agree that Arrow is the best show in the Arrowverse, and that is why it is the Arrowverse, because it all is about that show. And yeah, I just fell in love with that character. I think it's such a good show, such a good superhero show, or even a anti-hero show, because I wouldn't say he's always a hero, which I love. I hate it when it's always just the good guy, because that's not interesting to watch. Let's be real. In real life, of course, we want just the good person, but in a show we want complication, we want drama, we want stuff like that. And I think the reason I love the Arrowverse more than any DC movie I've seen, which is all of them, I and I know you guys are probably like, are like the CGI is trash and all that, but to me, it's more important story-wise. Like CGI is not as important as the story to me, because at the end of the day, those are just like effects. But if the story is trash, it's trash, you know? And I think what the Arrowverse did well, and what the future of DC and Marvel as well, I guess, can learn from these shows, and why we all love it so much, is because they were held back budget wise, because they were on TV. It's not even like it's on Disney Plus or like any of those streaming sites that have more budget now. It was on CW. So they were held back in terms of budget, in terms of episode length, in terms of like a lot of stuff. And I think that made them have to focus on the story and the character growth, and that has always been what I have missed from DC movies and stuff. Like always, it's a spectacle, it always looks great, there's always great fight scenes, but the DC movies have no depth. And not all of them, there are some that I'm like, wow, but as far as like a lot of them, most of the time it's like all flash, no substance. And that is why when people think of superhero movies, that's what they think of, you know, all flash, no story, no character growth. And I think that is what this Arrowverse got right. There were a lot of moments where you, like the CGI is maybe not that great or something, but because they were held back in that terms, they had to go into like deep into the character and like moral dilemmas and all of types of things. And of course, each show is like separate but together. And I think that is a good way to do what so many franchises are doing now. Where like it's a connected universe, you know, Marvel and DCU and all of that. And what Arrowverse did right is that each show has its own tone, has its own world, I almost want to say, has its own feel to it, and it's in one story. And yes, there is a connection to the other shows, and they're all technically in the same universe / world, and we're not going to talk about all of that, like different worlds and stuff like that. But what they did really well is did a through line without relying too much on that. Like when I watched The Flash, I watched the entire Flash without having seen Supergirl or the Arrow. The crossovers didn't confuse me at all. I was just like, okay, this is just a character he knows from another show that I haven't seen. But they never made it felt like you had to see that, which is crazy. Because if you, let's talk about, for example, Marvel. If you watch a Marvel movie now, there's no way you can understand what's happening unless you've seen at least one or two other ones. But I could watch The Flash without ever having seen any of the other shows, because of course I do know who The Flash is. And I do know his powers and stuff. But I knew nothing about his backstory or anything. But yeah, the characters themselves drew you in. And then I watched Supergirl, and I was like, first of all, she will always be my favorite Supergirl. Melissa Benoist, I think. I don't know if I'm saying it right. But she will always be my favorite Supergirl because she brought something so amazing to it. And I love that show. But anyway, I love all of the Arrowverse, and I can talk about that forever. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of like these connected universe movies and shows these days can learn a lot from this. That each show has to have its own thing. The Arrow, and when I finally got to that, I was like, first of all, this is the best show ever made, but best DC show for sure. Or best superhero show, actually. I'll say that. Because, I don't know, there's just so much depth. And yeah, I think the Arrow, in my opinion, and I know you guys are going to kill me for this, is better than Batman. I know you guys are like, come on, how can you say that? Batman is awesome. And Batman is cool, but at the end of the day, he's just a rich guy who like lost his parents, and there are millions of people like that, and they're not all Batman. Like what? And I'm not downplaying his trauma at all, but yeah, he's just a rich dude who lost his parents, and now he thinks he can like control the world. Like in any other movie, he would be a villain. You know what I mean? But anyway, the Arrow I do love so much because yes, he is a rich dude. And a lot of people like draw comparisons between them because they do have similar storylines and stuff like that. And like Ra's al Ghul and all of that. But what I loved about it is that it's not just that he's rich. Being rich was just a bonus for him. And eventually he loses his money. And it's inconsequential to the plot because he became the Arrow because he was on the freaking island for 5 years, more or less. And that is what I love about the Arrow, the whole backstory, like everything about it, the whole vibe of the show is just so... It's honestly very dark for the time. Like superhero shows like that was never like that serious. And even The Flash and like the other shows in the Arrowverse are all kind of like light and stuff. And except like the Batwoman show. But the Arrow had a different tone. It had that true like DC tone, but with character growth and emotion and humor, which, yeah, I think that lacks in a lot of DC content, and I think they can learn a lot. Because whenever, like, for example, when I watched Batman vs. Superman, all of the effects and the visuals and the fights were amazing. It was awesome. But did I feel connected? But did I feel connected to the characters? Not at all. I didn't cry when Superman died because I barely knew him. Yes, I saw him in a few other movies, but there wasn't any character growth there. And the Batman, I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, there's no connection to the characters. And even though it's like a spectacle to watch and you're like blown away by the visuals and you watch it and enjoy it, there will always be something missing that makes you go like, that was good, but because it misses that emotional tone and yeah, something extra, you know? And I think that's what the Arrowverse did well. And I think it was a good thing that they didn't have a lot of budget, because then it probably would have turned out just like every other DC project that is all like flashy and stuff like that. But then they wouldn't have gone as deep into the characters and things as they did. And yeah, I just love the Arrowverse. And if you've not seen any of the shows in the Arrowverse, it's the Arrow, Supergirl, The Flash, Batwoman, which I also haven't seen, the Legends of Tomorrow. There's so many shows, and I don't think you have to see them all if you don't want to, but I do recommend watching the core three, which is the Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl, because those three are like the most connected, I'd say, and they do a lot of crossovers, and they're actually like friends and we all love their friendship if you know it. But if you haven't seen it, I would recommend watching those three. And even if you don't want to watch them all, just watch the Arrow, okay? I'm doing you a favor, go do that. And I know this is like so behind. The Arrow and like the Flash just finished I don't know if it finished this year or last year, but anyway, the Flash just finished, and like the Arrowverse is totally done, and like it's been done for a while and no one's talking about it anymore. But I just wanted to talk about it. I don't want it to be forgotten, you know? Because I've watched those shows and rewatched them a million times. And the rewatchability is fantastic because, yeah, there's just so many storylines, so many things. And yes, there are parts that I'm like season 3 of Arrow, but, and post season 4 of The Flash, trash. And it's just because I don't know what it is, but most of it is fantastic. And if you can bear through some of the cheesiness and some of the overly sappy lines, but the Arrow doesn't really have that problem, but the Flash and Supergirl definitely do, because that is kind of like, they have more of a superhero tone where it's all about like the lesson and stuff. But I do love it still, but I do warn you, there is some cheesiness. But The Arrow, I think, is exempt from this because they don't go into that like cheesy superhero vibe, and it is because it is more grounded. He doesn't have powers. He's just extremely talented and extremely trained. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this today. I know this is probably not a long video. I don't know. I just think no one's talking about the Arrowverse anymore. And like I said, I know it's like totally over, and it's been years since anyone talked about the Arrow or the Flash or any of those things. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about it today and watch the Arrow. I'm feeling like I'm gonna rewatch it right now if I can. I don't remember if it's still on Netflix. It might not be, but I'll find a way. But yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was a short one, but I don't know, I wanted to chat about it. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.